Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, the war is getting serious. Not to say it wasn't already very, very serious, but we are now seeing another level of seriousness being introduced into this conflict. Now, within the last 24 hours, we have seen the North Atlantic Treaty Organization utilize Storm Shadow missiles to attack targets inside of the Kursk Oblast of the Russian Federation. Allegedly, NATO was attempting to target an underground bunker just to the east of the main manor of this estate that you're looking at inside the Kursk Oblast. Again, allegedly, this was a command site for high-ranking Russian officials and quite possibly, reported by NATO, North Korean personnel as well. Now, first, let's take a step back and ask ourselves, why would high-ranking Russian military leaders be present in a bunker that is, in all probability, about 20 miles from the border? Yeah, they do not need to be that close to direct military operations. So that in and of itself is a bit strange. Now, what we do know is there was a Storm Shadow attack against a target towards this estate. Again, we probably won't know what was actually struck or why it was struck. Was the missile system, the Storm Shadow, spoofed by Russian electronic warfare? We just don't know at this point. However, there was a Russian response. Was it a response for the ATACMS that were fired previously into the Bryansk region? Or was it for the Storm Shadow attack on this locale that just occurred more recently? But what we do know is that the Russians responded with a ballistic type missile system. We believe it was a larger ballistic missile system that had multiple reentry warheads, meaning the primary warhead then has the capability of essentially breaking apart, and the smaller reentry vehicles that can then independently attack targets near the city. And we do have video footage of what occurred, and given the ballistic trajectory of the missiles, you can clearly see them separating, and you can clearly see that in all probability these are multiple reentry vehicles. Now, what system was it? Most of the media right now is claiming that the Russians used an RS-26, intercontinental medium-range ballistic missile, such as what you see here. Now, was that the system that the Russians used in this attack? In short, we just don't know yet. We do not know. Is it possible? Yes, it is. Is it possible that the Russians are using a new system, a derivative of the RS-26? That's possible as well. We have seen over the course of the last decade, especially with the Chinese, we have seen the Chinese actively researching the capabilities of using intercontinental ballistic missiles which would normally be armed with nuclear weapons, armed with conventional warheads. Now look, as I've talked about before, the Russians and the Chinese are being pushed closer and closer together. They essentially now have an active military alliance against the United States and certain Western European nation states. That's a fact. As have the North Koreans, as have the Iranians. So the question is, right now, was this a designed attack by the Russians to target Dnipro with this ballistic weapon system, or was it a statement? Was it not so much a attack on a military target, a purposely designed attack on a military target, or was it a statement by the Russian Federation saying enough is enough? Is this a statement saying that instead of just a kinetic impact point, which we believe occurred from the video footage that I observed of these reentry vehicles impacting near the city, they did not appear to be laden with explosives, conventional explosives. It's possible they were just kinetic impacts with no explosives, which would then lead one to believe that the Russians were attempting to send a message. Instead of these being kinetic impact devices filled with sand or concrete or whatever, these could have been nuclear weapons. We could have annihilated the city. We could have erased it from the map with multiple nuclear strikes. So that's the question right now. Was this a weapon system that the Russians were testing and were actively trying to destroy a Ukrainian target? Was it a system based on the RS-26 that is designed to hit targets with high-speed, hypersonic, intercontinental ballistic missiles? Or was it a statement saying, hey, we're not messing around? The attacks with ATACMS and Storm Shadows against targets inside the Russian Federation must cease. So feel free to comment in the comment section on that. Now, at the same time, the only way that the Ukrainians could use these weapon systems to attack targets deep inside of Russia, or in the case of the attack in the Kursk Oblast, not so deep inside of Russia, would be the direct participation of NATO. Look, these weapon systems that are being used right now, the targeting information, the inputting of the coordinates for that missile to strike is coming from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the United Kingdom, or France, in regards to the Storm Shadow. The targeting information is coming from Western intelligence, be it satellites or what have you. So when the Russians say, hey, the United Kingdom right now is a direct participant in this conflict, when they say, hey, the United States is a direct participant in this conflict. It is. Again, these are not free flight rockets or artillery that are being launched inside of Russia, into Russia. These are incredibly advanced weapon systems in which real-time targeting information has to be inputted into these systems. And not only that, the intelligence. The Ukrainians do not have satellites. They do not have the same sort of sensor-based intel that NATO and the United States possesses. So yes, when these strikes are launched by quote-unquote Ukraine, the Ukraine, it is essentially NATO. It really is. Now, furthermore, things are continuing to become incredibly uncomfortable for the Ukrainians in the ongoing Russian Donbass offensive. Let's look at what has happened, especially within the vicinity of Kharkova. Very important piece of what is happening in this war. Let's back up a little bit where you, the viewer, can see exactly what has been happening. And we're going to go all the way back to the 1st of November. And again, here we go. Now, as I've talked before, eventually this is going to become one unified front. This pocket, this salient that now exists, that's being enveloped by Russian forces. The Ukrainian units inside of this pocket are going to be destroyed. And right now, we are seeing Russian troops that have actually entered Kharkova. Right now, Russian forces are inside the city. We expect the city to fall within the next day or two. We also expect the rapid collapse of what we are calling the Kharkova pocket. You can see multiple envelopment operations that are underway in this area. Main units involved by the Russian Federation: the 40th Naval Infantry Brigade, the 36th Separate Guards Motorized Rifle Brigade, the 37th Separate Guards Motorized Rifle Brigade, the 139th Separate Guards Motorized Rifle Battalion, 39th Separate Guards Motorized Rifle Brigade, the 18th Machine Gun Artillery Division. This is a unit that originates from the east of the Russian Federation. Anyway, there's a host of Russian units in this very large operation that probably right now we're seeing upwards to possibly 200,000 Russian troops operating in the entirety of the Donbass offensive. It is an incredibly large operation that is breaking the back of the Ukrainian military. And that's why we're seeing the desperation that we're seeing right now in terms of NATO now using its weapon systems to strike targets inside the Russian Federation. We fear this is an attempt to escalate the conflict in which we will finally see direct participation by conventional units of the United Kingdom, France, possibly the United States, being involved in what will essentially devolve into World War III. Again, the use of these weapon systems would ultimately come from Washington, D.C. Joseph Biden is not calling the shots. He is not the president. He is not the key leadership figure in Washington, D.C. a person and or a group of individuals in Washington, D.C. are making this decision to attack targets inside of Russia, thus receiving a response from Russia with the use of these ballistic missile systems. Are they intercontinental ballistic missiles? Is it some other weapon system? Again, we just don't know at this point. But from what I have observed, again, this does look like some sort of reentry vehicle from a intercontinental ballistic missile system, which would be a response from Russia saying, hey, quit what you're doing while you're ahead, or this could look like something else. So where this is going to end at this point, we just do not know. We will continue to watch. We will continue to report. Thank you for joining us. More to come. Have a good day.